William enters the cafe with a simple plan. Test whether someone can love him for who he truly is, not what he owns. Camila walks in, radiating sincerity. But as their connection deepens, will the truths they hide tear them apart? Before we begin the story, comment below what the country you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone! The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the small cafe as William stepped inside. The bell above the door jinged, signaling his arrival, but no one paid much attention. In his worn jeans and a faded jacket, he looked like any other customer in the modest establishment. Finding a corner table, William slid into the seat, his fingers brushing over the cup of coffee he had ordered to calm his nerves. He glanced at his watch, noting that there was 10 minutes before his blind date was scheduled to arrive. "Let's see if she's different," he muttered under his breath, taking a sip of the bitter brew. This wasn't the first time William had gone on a blind date, but it was the first time he was deliberately testing someone. Tired of superficial relationships that revolved around his wealth, he had decided to disguise himself as an average man. No designer suits, no luxury watches, just him, stripped of the layers that often defined him in the eyes of others. The doorbell jinged again, and William looked up. A woman in a simple blue dress and a beige coat entered, her eyes scanning the room nervously. Her chestnut brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and she clutched her purse tightly, her steps hesitant. "Camila?" William called out, standing awkwardly. Her eyes landed on him, and she offered a tentative smile. "Hi, you must be William," he said, extending a hand. "Sorry if I'm not what you expected." Camila smiled wide as she shook his hand. "You're exactly what I expected, a normal guy." They settled into their seats, and William found himself studying her closely. Camila had an easy, approachable demeanor, and her eyes sparkled with genuine curiosity. "So, tell me," Camila began, stirring sugar into her coffee. "What do you do?" William hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I work odd jobs, mostly construction, deliveries, whatever pays the bill." Camila nodded, her expressions neutral. "That must be tough, but at least it keeps you active, right?" William chuckled. "Yeah, you could say that. What about you?" "I'm a teacher," Camila said, her tone brightening. "Third grade. It's challenging, but I love it." "Third grade? That sounds like a lot of energy to manage." She laughed, the sound light and musical. "It is, but it's worth it. Seeing the kids learn and grow is the best part." As they talked, William couldn't help but notice how Camila didn't flinch at his modest background, or what she thought was his background. She didn't probe or judge, instead focusing on their conversation with sincere interest. Halfway through the date, William accidentally knocked over his coffee cup, spilling the contents across the table. He grabbed napkins to mop up the mess. "Here, let me help," Camila said, her hands quick to join his. "Thanks," William said, embarrassed. "Not exactly my smoothest moment." "It happens," Camila said with a shrug, her smile unwavering. "Honestly, I'm just glad you're not one of those guys who spends the whole date talking about himself." William blinked. "Is that a common problem?" "More than you'd think." Her remark made William relax. She wasn't putting on airs or playing games. She seemed refreshingly real. As the conversation continued, William noticed something that made him pause. Camila's response weren't just polite, they were thoughtful. She asked questions that showed she was genuinely interested in him as a person, not in what he could offer. When the check arrived, William reached out for his wallet, but Camila stopped him. "I've got this," she said, pulling out her card. "What? No, I should—" "Please," Camila insisted. "You've been a perfect gentleman. Consider it my treat." William hesitated, his hand still on his wallet. He had deliberately brought just enough cash for a modest meal, part of his effort to maintain his disguise. But Camila's gesture left him momentarily speechless. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Positive," she said, smiling. "Besides, it's just coffee." As they stepped outside, the evening air cool against their faces, William couldn't shake the feeling that Camila had caught him off guard in more ways than one. "Thanks for meeting me," William said, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. Thanks for inviting me, Camila replied. I had a great time. So did I, William admitted, his voice soft. Camila looked at him for a moment, her smile warm and genuine. Good night, Camila, he said, watching as she walked away. Standing alone under the dim street lights, William's thoughts raced. Camila's kindness and warmth had surprised him, and her gesture of paying off their coffee had left him questioning his assumptions. Was she truly as selfless as she seemed, or was there more to her story? As William headed back to his car, he couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. For the first time in a long while, he wondered if he might have found someone worth knowing. Not for her looks, her charm, or her background, but for the person she truly was. And he wasn't about to let this end here. The floor-to-ceiling windows of William's penthouse framed the glittering skyline of the city. The apartment was a masterpiece of modern design, sleek furniture, marble countertops, and walls adorned with rare artwork. Yet, as William leaned against the edge of the grand kitchen island, sipping a glass of scotch, it all felt strangely hollow. He set the glass down with a quiet clink and gazed out at the lights below. His thoughts drifted to Camila and the way she had smiled at him, without hesitation, without judgment. She hadn't blinked at his frayed jacket or the cheap coffee he ordered. I might have underestimated her, William murmured to himself. His mind traveled back to the blind date setup his assistant had suggested, describing Camila as a warm and genuine person. But William had been skeptical. After years of shallow encounters, he had built walls around himself, using his wealth as both a shield and a weapon. The bitterness of his last relationship surfaced in his thoughts. He could still hear Vanessa's words ringing in his ears. William, you're amazing, but honestly, what's the point of it if you won't spend your money? Isn't that the best part of being you? He had walked away that night, realizing she wasn't in love with him, just a lifestyle he could provide. That was when the idea of this experiment had begun to take shape. Better to know now than later, William muttered, pushing the memory aside. Meanwhile, Camila sat in her modest living room, her feet tucked beneath her on the worn-out couch. Her sister Mia was sprawled on the floor, while her grandmother dozed in a recliner. So, Mia asked, glancing up from her studies, how was the big blind date? Camila chuckled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. It was different. Mia raised an eyebrow. Different how? Well, for one, he's not what I expected, Camila admitted, a small smile tugging at her lips. He's quirky, a little awkward, but sweet. Definitely not one of those polished, slick guys you'd expect on a blind date. Quirky, huh? Mia teased. Sounds promising. Camila laughed. Don't get ahead of yourself. It was just coffee. But I liked him. He seemed real, you know? Like he wasn't trying to impress me. Her thoughts drifting back to William's warm smile and the way he had listened so intently to her stories. William walked into his study, the dark wood-paneled walls lined with shelves of books and memorabilia from his travels. He pulled out a notepad and jotted down an idea for their next meeting. A park, he said aloud. Someplace simple. Let's see how she handles that. Across the city, Camila's evening was winding down. She checked on her grandmother, who was now fast asleep, and helped Mia pack up her study materials. As they cleaned up, Mia looked at her sister thoughtfully. You seem happy tonight, Mia said. Camila paused, considering her words. I think I am, she said softly. William seems different, like he doesn't care about all the surface stuff. It was nice talking to someone like that. Mia smiled. Maybe this one's worth seeing again. Camila shrugged, though the warmth in her expression betrayed her interest. We'll see. It's just one date. But as Camila climbed into bed that night, her thoughts kept returning to William. His shy smile, his easy laughter, and the kindness that seemed to radiate from him. The next morning, William finalized his plan. He texted Camila, suggesting they meet at a local park for a walk and a picnic. Her reply came quickly. Sounds perfect. Looking forward to it. William set the phone down and took a deep breath. The test was still on, but something had shifted. He wasn't just testing Camila anymore. He was beginning to hope she might actually pass. "Let's see how far this goes," he said, a small smile playing on his lips as he imagined her reaction to the next date. In the back of his mind, though, a flicker of doubt lingered. He wondered if he was pushing the boundaries too far, or if Camila might have secrets of her own. The sun cast a golden glow over the park as William spread out a checkered picnic blanket beneath a tall oak tree, the hum of distant laughter and the chatter of families creating a soothing background melody. Camila arrived a few minutes later, carrying a small basket and looking around curiously. "This is unexpected," she said with a smile, setting the basket down. "What can I say? I like to keep things simple," William replied, gesturing her to sit. Camila smoothed her skirt and sat down, her gaze sweeping across the park. "Most people wouldn't think a park is a great date spot," William chuckled. "Most people don't see the beauty in the little things." Camila tilted her head, intrigued by his words. "You're full of surprises, William." As they unpacked their food, sandwiches, fruit, and a thermos of lemonade, the conversation flowed easily. Camila shared stories about her childhood, painting vivid pictures of summer days spent climbing trees and building forts with her younger sister, Mia. "And then," Camila said, laughing, "the branch snapped, and we both ended in the creek. Mia was fine, but I got grounded for a week." William laughed along with her, enjoying the warmth in her voice. "Sounds like you were the adventurous type." "Still am," Camila admitted, her eyes twinkling. "What about you? Any wild childhood stories?" William hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I guess I spent a lot of time moving around. My parents traveled for work, so I got to see a lot of places, but it made things complicated." Camila's expression softened. "That must have been hard, always being the new kid." "It was," William said, surprised by how easy it was to open up to her. "But I guess it taught me to appreciate the little things, like a quiet afternoon in the park." As the conversation deepened, Camila began talking about her passion for teaching. "I love working with kids," she said, "but it's not just about academics. It's about giving them a safe space to grow, to believe in themselves." William nodded, captivated by the sincerity in her voice. "It sounds like you're doing more than just teaching. You're changing lives." Camila smiled, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I hope so. One day, I'd love to open a learning center for underprivileged kids, a place where they can get help with schoolwork, but also feel supported." Something stirred in William as he listened. Her dream wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about making a difference. It was so unlike the ambitions he was used to hearing from people in his circle. As the afternoon turned into evening, William walked Camila back to her car. They joked and teased each other along the way, the easy camaraderie between them growing with each step. But when they reached her car, Camila groaned. "Not again," she muttered, staring at the vehicle. "What's wrong?" William asked. She gestured to the car, which refused to start. "It's been acting up for weeks. I guess it finally decided to give up." William stepped forward. "Let me take a look." But Camila stopped him, holding up her hands. "No, it's fine. I can handle it." William frowned. "Are you sure? I don't mind." Camila laughed lightly, though there was an edge of frustration in her tone. "Oh, thanks, but I'm used to this. Bad luck and I are old friends." William watched as she called a friend for a ride, her calm demeanor masking what he suspected was mounting stress. She was independent to a fault, determined to handle everything on her own. That night, as William sat in his penthouse, her words echoed in his mind. "Bad luck and I are old friends." Curiosity got the better of him, and he pulled out his laptop. With a few keystrokes, he began searching Camila's background. What he found only deepened his respect for her. Camila's modest income as a teacher barely covered her expenses, yet she managed to care for her younger sister and their grandmother. Her financial situation was precarious, but she never let it show. William leaned back in his chair, conflicted. His deception felt heavier now, knowing how hard Camila worked to stay positive and make ends meet. "She deserves to know the truth," he muttered, but a part of him still hesitated, afraid of ruining what they had begun to build. As he stared out at the city lights, William realized he was no longer testing Camila. He was falling for her, and he wasn't sure what to do about it. The warm glow of candlelight bathed in the small bistro as William and Camila sat across from each other at a quiet table by the window. Their third date had been Camila's suggestion, a cozy spot for its homemade pasta and intimate atmosphere. William scanned the menu, smiling as Camila enthusiastically debated between two dishes. "Everything looks amazing," she said, her finger trailing down the list. "You can't go wrong," William replied, setting his menu aside. When the waiter returned, Camila ordered a simple pasta dish, while William opted for the chef's special. The waiter then suggested a wine pairing, and William nodded confidently. "The Barolo will pair well with her dish, and I'll have the Châtenay du Pape." Camila raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a teasing smile. "I thought you said you were much of a wine guy." William froze for a split second, then clearing his throat. Yeah, I read a lot. Picked up a few things here and there." Camila laughed lightly, her eyes sparkling. "Well, I'm impressed. Most people wouldn't know they're Barolos from their Bordeaux." William forced a chuckle, inwardly cursing himself for slipping. He had been so careful to maintain his humble facade, but his automatic response had nearly betrayed his true background. The evening progressed and the slip seemed forgotten. Camila spoke animatedly about her work and the progress she was making with her community project, a weekend tutoring program for underprivileged kids. "The problem is funding," she admitted. "We need supplies, better facilities. Sometimes it feels impossible." "You're doing something incredible, Camila," William said earnestly. She smiled, the sincerity in his voice bolstering her resolve. "Thanks, William. That means a lot." Despite her appreciation, William felt a pang of guilt. He could solve her funding issues in an instant, but revealing his wealth now would undo everything he'd been trying to build with her. A week later, Camila and William go to a neighborhood charity event she was helping organize. The community center buzzed with energy, kids laughing, parents chatting, and volunteers bustling about. Camila was in her element, directing activities and mingling with ease. William watched her from a distance, admiration swelling in his chest. She wasn't just kind, she was a force for good, pouring her heart into helping others despite her own challenges. During the event, William slipped away to speak with the center's director, an older woman named Marcy. "I'd like to help," he said discreetly, handing her an envelope. Marcy's eyes widened as she peeked inside. This is incredible. Are you sure?" "Completely," William replied, "but please, keep it anonymous." The next day, Camila was ecstatic. She called William, barely able to contain her excitement. "William, you won't believe this. Someone donated enough money to cover the program's expenses for the entire year." "That's amazing," William said, fighting to keep the surprise out of his voice. "Do you know who it was?" "No," Camila admitted. "They insisted on remaining anonymous, but whoever they are, they're a lifesaver." William smiled to himself, relieved that she hadn't connected the dots. That evening, William's best friend, Daniel, stopped by his penthouse. Daniel, a sharp and pragmatic lawyer, had been privy of William's plans from the start, but had always voiced his doubts. "Still playing the poor guy, huh?" William said, lounging on the couch with a glass of scotch. "It's not a game, Daniel," William replied, pacing by the window. "I needed to know if she could love me for me, not for the money, not for the name." Daniel took a sip, his gaze skeptical. "And what's the verdict?" "She's different," William said, his tone softening. "She's real. Everything I've ever wanted." Daniel leaned forward, setting his glass down. "Then tell her the truth. Sooner or later, she's going to find out. And if she finds out from someone else, it won't matter how real she is. She'll feel betrayed." William ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I know, I don't want to lose her." Daniel stood, clapping a hand on William's shoulder. "Then stop lying to her. Trust me, man. Honesty's your only shot at keeping this thing alive." As Daniel left, William stared out at the city, the weight of his deception pressing down on him. He had thought the charade would protect him, but now it felt like a tickling time bomb. The question wasn't if Camila would find out. It was when. And William wasn't sure if their connection could survive the fallout. One day, after receiving their salary, Camila's friend generously invited her to a luxurious restaurant. The elegant hum of conversation filled the high-end restaurant as William sat at a private table near the back, flanked by two sharp-dressed business associates. His demeanor was entirely different, confident, authoritative, and polished in a way Camila had never seen. Camila suddenly stopped in her tracks when she saw the man in front of her. He wasn't the William she knew, the modest, unassuming man with the worn jacket and kind smile. Instead, he was dressed in a tailored suit. His every movement exuded wealth and power. Camila's stomach twisted as she overheard snippets of their conversation. Words like merger, assets, and multi-million-dollar deals floated towards her, each one chipping away at the image she thought she knew. Her friend tugged at her arm. "Camila, are you okay?" Camila stammered, her gaze locked on William. He hadn't noticed her yet, but she couldn't stay. "I need to go." Just then, William glanced over and saw Camila with a stunned expression. Without hesitation, she quickly grabbed her friend and turned away to leave. The next day, Camila's emotions simmered somewhere between anger and heartbreak. She replayed the scene in her mind, wondering how she could have been so blind. When William called her, she answered curtly. "Camila, can we talk, please?" he asked, his voice tinged with nervousness. "Sure," she replied, her tone clipped. "Come over." An hour later, William arrived at Camila's apartment. She opened the door, her arms crossed and her expressions guarded. "Come in," she said flatly. William stepped inside, his usual ease replaced by unease. He sat on the couch, but Camila remained standing, her eyes narrowing. "So," she began, her voice steady but cold, "who are you really? Because the man I met at the cafe isn't the one I saw last night." William sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Camila, I can explain." "Then start explaining," she snapped, her voice breaking slightly. "Why did you lie to me?" "I didn't mean to," William said, his eyes pleading. "At first, I just wanted to see if someone could care about me. Not my money, not my name. So I kept it from you. But then I met you, and you were everything I wasn't expecting." Camila crossed her arms tighter, her anger bubbling to the surface. "And you thought pretending to be someone else was the best way to find out?" "I know, it was wrong," William admitted. "But Camila, what we have, it's real. That's why I couldn't stop seeing you, even when I knew I should have told you the truth." Camila shook her head, stepping away from him. "How can I believe that? You didn't trust me enough to be honest. How can I trust you now?" William stood, desperate to make her understand. "Because I care about you, Camila, more than I've ever cared about anyone. I was scared of losing you, and I messed up. But everything I felt, everything I've said, it's all been real." Camila's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away, unwilling to see how deeply he'd hurt her. I need time," she said quietly. "I can't do this right now." "Camila, please." "No," she cut him off, her voice trembling. Just go." William hesitated, his heart breaking at the distance between them, but he nodded, knowing he had to respect her wishes. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice heavy with regret. As the door closed behind him, Camila sank into the couch, her mind and heart in turmoil. The following days were a blur. Camila threw herself into teaching and her family trying to bury her pain to the familiar rhythms of her life. But she couldn't shake the memory of William, the man who she thought she knew and the man he turned out to be. Meanwhile, William wrestled with his own guilt. Daniel's words echoed in his mind. "You should have told her the truth, but now all you can do is prove to her you're worth it." One evening, as Camila graded papers at her kitchen table, an ornate envelope arrived in the mail. She opened it, her brow furrowing as she reads the content. "You are cordially invited to a gala hosted by Willamander Hayes." Below, a handwritten note was attached. "Camila, please come." I owe you the full truth, and I want to show you what you mean to me. William, Camila whispered, staring at the invitation, her emotions swirling. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to shut him out completely, but another part, one she couldn't quite silence, was curious. Did she owe him a chance to explain? As the clock ticked on, Camila remained torn, the invitation clutched in her hands. The decision she had made would change everything. The grand ballroom was a spectacle of elegance filled with glittering chandeliers, flowing champagne, and the soft melodies of an orchestra playing in the background. Camila stood near the entrance, nervously adjusting the hem of her simple black dress. She had almost decided not to come, but ultimately she needed closure, if nothing else. A host approached her with a warm smile. "Miss Bennet, Mr. Hayes is waiting for you." Camila nodded and followed, her heart pounding as she entered the main hall. The crowd buzzed with conversation, but all she could focus on was William, standing on the stage and looking right at her. The orchestra quieted as William stepped up to the microphone, his gaze sweeping the room before landing firmly on Camila. He took a deep breath, the usual confidence in his demeanor replaced by vulnerability. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "This event isn't just about celebrating success. It's about honesty, connection, and the people who make us better." He paused, his eyes softening as he continued. "For most of my life, I've struggled to trust. I've hidden behind my wealth, afraid that people only cared about what I had, not who I was. But then, I met someone who changed everything." The room fell silent as William's gaze locked onto Camilla's. "Camila Bennett, you showed me that love isn't about appearances. It's about seeing someone's heart, and your heart is the most beautiful thing I've ever known." The ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd as William continued, unflinching. "I was wrong to test you. I was wrong to hide who I was. But through it all, you showed me what kindness, resilience, and love truly look like. You inspired me, Camila, and for that, I'll always be grateful." Camila's breath caught in her throat as William stepped down from the stage, the crowd parting as he approached her. He stopped in front of her, his eyes filled with hope and vulnerability. "I know I don't deserve it," he said softly, "but I'm asking for a second chance. Can we start over?" Camila's lips trembled as she blinked back tears. "I can't say I'm happy about the test," she admitted, her voice soft but firm. "But I believe you, and I believe in us." The room erupted in applause as William smiled, relief washing over him. He reached for her hand and she took it, feeling the warmth of his sincerity. Weeks later, Camila received an unexpected message from William. He asked her to meet him at a downtown address, offering no explanation. When she arrived, she found herself standing in front of a beautifully renovated building. The sign above the door read, "Bennett Learning Center." Camila gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, as William appeared behind her holding a small set of keys. "I know how much this dream means to you," he said, his voice full of emotion. "So, I wanted to help you make it a reality. This place belongs to you now." Tears spilled down Camila's cheeks as she turned to face him. "William, I don't even know what to say." William smiled, dropping to one knee in front of her, a small velvet box in his hand. "You've taught me what love really means," he said, his voice steady. "Will you let me spend my life proving it to you?" Camila laughed through her tears, her heart overflowing. "Yes, but only if you promise no more secrets." "Deal," William said, slipping the ring onto her finger. Their wedding was a perfect blend of their worlds, elegant yet intimate, filled with friends, family, and the children from Camila's new learning center. As William and Camila shared their first dance, the room seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in their own universe. Camila leaned in close, her voice a whisper. "You didn't need to test me, you know." William smiled, pulling her a little closer. "I didn't need to test you," he agreed. "I just needed to find you." And as they danced in the soft glow of the lights, they knew they had found something worth holding onto forever. As William and Camila danced into their happily ever after, Their story reminds us that love isn't about appearances or wealth. It's about trust, growth, and seeing the beauty in each other's hearts. If this story touched you as much as it touched us, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who believes in the power of love and second chances. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the extraordinary in everyday life. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss another story that speaks to your soul. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.